Support for The Nocturnist comes from the California Medical Association.
At The Nocturnist, we are careful to ensure that all stories comply with healthcare privacy laws. Details may have been changed to ensure patient confidentiality. All views expressed are those of the person speaking and not their employer.
This is The Nocturnists, Uncertainty in Medicine. I'm Emily Silverman. And today, we're stepping inside the studio of Leila Simon Hayes. Leila is a visual artist and award-winning designer in Boston. Her work explores color, shape, and movement, and takes the form of rich, bold patterns printed on textiles, wallpapers, homewares, book covers, and other household objects. Central to Leila's process is that she starts all her work without a plan.
I mean, most of what I'm making comes from a practice of worshiping imperfectionism and really letting things unfold as they unfold. Starting with shapes, usually from black ink. I use a lot of sumi ink. I fell in love. It's just the most opaque, smooth, delicious substance to paint with.
Today, we jump into Leila's world to learn more about what her artistic process, dedicated to the inevitability of spontaneous beauty, can teach us about navigating uncertainty in medicine. Because for Leila, when she's in the studio, it's about making work, but it's also about cultivating the skills of sitting with uncertainty and trusting her gut. Both skills that she's relied on to navigate her own journey of diagnostic uncertainty and physical pain. Since she was a teen, Leila's been dealing with food sensitivities that severely impact her health, most notably an extreme reaction to sugar, which, when she was 19, doctors told her wasn't real. By the time she was in her 20s, chronic pain was constant, along with inexplicable injuries. Still, she encountered resistance in the healthcare system, false certainty, or even outright disbelief when she tried to seek help.
I got the sense that I was annoying to doctors and that they very easily put me in a diagnosis that feels like, this is not very nice, but kind of like a dumpster where people who have challenging diagnoses get dumped when doctors don't know.
Leila's pain felt mysterious, ever-changing, and impossible to describe in the short bursts of time allotted in medical appointments.
It never was a diagnosis that resonated with me. It was basically just acknowledging that I have chronic pain and that it has mysterious elements and onsets and responses, but I felt kind of dismissed. And so I kind of backed away from doctors for many, many years and decided that talking about my health was not great for my health. And so I just really paused.
Leila found ways to prevent and manage her own pain best she could as her career as a designer took off. The work drew on her love of drawing, painting, and collage, all things that she'd done and loved since she was a kid. But as her life filled up with work and with raising young kids, she started to feel like something was missing.
You know, I've always been an artist, but when I was 41, I had just left a job that was really unsatisfying, and leaving that job made me feel the absence of my own art making more intensely than I really ever had.
Leila said the pull back to a personal creative practice, one that came from her own impulses and not from her job, felt impossible to ignore.
It's as if it was asking something of me and asking me to get out of the way.
So she went back to working freelance. and shortly thereafter came across an idea on Instagram called the 100 Days Project. Basically, come up with a prompt to make something every day for 100 days. The prompt should be so simple that you can't not do it every day.
I wrote this whole long list, great ideas. There must have been like 75 different ideas, but they were all a little complicated, and I wasn't sure that I could show up for them for 100 days. And at the very bottom, I don't know when I added it, but it's in a different pen, it's in horrible handwriting. It was just like 10 shapes, 10 colors remixed every day. And it was so simple, and it was so back to what I really loved as a kid, collaging tissue paper and gluing it onto construction paper, like really the basics of shapes relating.
Leila set the list aside, but she couldn't get the idea out of her head. A few days later, she got started.
Time was of the essence. It was just like, if I don't start it now, I'm not gonna do it. I created 10 shapes, and I chose 10 colors, and I set up a file that I could just go to every single day and just remix the shapes and colors. Some of them would take 5 minutes, some of them would take 2 hours, some of them would take something in between. I tried to go really light and really quick, back to that feeling of getting out of the way of the art that wanted to come forward, and I would notice myself kind of judging the process. This is too simple. I no longer like these colors, or these shapes are, no longer interesting to me, but I just kept the colors, kept the shapes, and kept going. On the 100th day, I unintentionally made a pattern.
Leila put all the shapes together, playing with layering and repetition in a way she hadn't for any of the 99 days that had come before. All of a sudden, these shapes, each one of them related to the essence of some memory or emotion or sensation, became something else entirely.
Something felt like it really clicked. I was like, well, I'm done with this project. But then I was like, I am not done with this project. This project just began. So I committed to another 100 days, but this time with the sense of exploring pattern and playing with repetition. There's something I really wanted to show you that's fun. Let's see.
She said the return to art making was indescribably healing. The way it put her more back in touch with her body and her intuition and allowed her to just be more fully herself. Part of this is just how iterative her process is.
I never have an idea of how something is going to be in the end, which is good because there is no end, because I'm constantly reusing pieces or elements in different ways. I'm always like cutting things up that I think I'm done with. I have this basket that's called the For Later basket. So I throw out a lot of stuff because I make a large quantity of elements to work with, and I need to be kind of ruthless or else this place would be full of paper.
Leila's studio is like a shrine to uncertainty. White sheets of paper hang on one wall with simple shapes drying in black ink. On the opposite wall, colorful quilts adorned with intricately interlocking patterns morph and remake themselves the longer you look. Simplicity becomes complexity through listening, Leila says. Listening to what wants to come out as she works. She leads us to a collection of shapes cut out like puzzle pieces, lying on the counter. All of them formed the basis of a series of textiles she displayed at a recent gallery show called Spirit Studies.
I created this collection just based on different dance memories that I had had. Dance has been an incredibly important part of my life forever. And maybe they were gestures of literal feelings of dancing, like moving from one area to the next. Or this was actually, I was drawing the experience of sliding on the floor in my socks at age 10 at my friend Andrea's house listening to Michael Jackson. And that's just like, just like that kind of feeling that then, hold on, became this whole pattern that told an even deeper story of, right? Yeah, it's got this whole thing, but then there's also some sadness, there's some exuberance, there's everything mixed in.
Leila says that more and more, she's finding freedom in resisting the need for clean symbolism in her work.
There's no right or wrong, and there's no one imposing what should happen or what someone else is seeing. In fact, I have this like really strong filter for when people tell me what they see in my artwork, like, oh, that looks like a, blah, 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 and I don't have any problem with hearing that. I actually really enjoy hearing that people connect with it in their own ways, but really I thrive on how abstract the process is and how abstract the outcome is for me.
The parallels between Leila's resistance to premature categorizing in her artwork and her medical journey are striking. She says that after stepping away from doctors in her early 20s, she was really on her own for many years in terms of managing her pain and an increasing list of other symptoms. But that wilderness, although lonely at times, just felt so obviously preferable to what she saw as Western medicine's agenda to fit her into whatever box it could stuff her in.
Not becoming that diagnosis and not becoming the story of a person with that diagnosis was really helpful to live in the uncertainty of what was going on inside of my body and really finding some comfort in not needing to know. But I still really struggled with chronic pain, and it was like, decades into it.
Then a couple years ago, out of the blue, a mutual friend connected Leila with Rachel Lusos-Tin, a researcher studying people's experiences of misdiagnosis and chronic pain and how they communicated about that pain with their doctors. Leila says she still doesn't know why she agreed to go meet with the researcher. By that point, she was so burnt out on trying to pin down the unpin-downable, but she went. And it turns out that that interview would be a total game changer.
We talked for probably an hour or two, and her questions were open-ended questions that were very specific. Like, she really had a lot of patience for trying to get to the word combinations that describe accurately pain, trying out words, going back, being like, well, okay, that one was right, but that one wasn't right, and then talking about how much space specific pain takes up in my body and what the edges of it feel like and what the sensation of it feels like, offering a real opening for it to sound weird and for it to not sound medically correct. And like, one of the most important words that came from that interview was gluey. I was talking about a specific type of pain that I get every once in a while that is like a gluey sensation inside my joints, and I kept being like, I know that's a weird word, and she was like, that's such a great word, And, that with a combination of some other words led her to be like, only people that I have interviewed with this particular diagnosis use those combination of words.
This interview ended up unlocking what would become a really important diagnosis for Leila. One that she still holds lightly and chose not to share with us, but that gave her new tools to navigate her pain, listen to her body, and prevent further injury.
Her listening to me so deeply and so openly, without an agenda, without trying to fit me into a box, it helped me really listen to myself. I felt safer to go inside of the pain.
The practice of going inside the pain, becoming more acquainted with its exact dimensions and textures and qualities and sensations, has been critical in what Leila says has been a sea change in her experience of the pain itself. Still, Leila says, uncertainty is ongoing in her life and in her creative practice.
Oh, this is fun.
And rather than fight it, she's learned to sit with it, to listen, and to trust that something meaningful will eventually emerge.
Oh, this is good. So, I can't find the original pieces, but did you just gasp?
Yes.
I love that.
Because it's this stunning piece of art that you just took scissors to and are shredding.
I think that's the whole point. I recently was working on a piece that started with a big gesture with a gigantic marker, like really playing with pressure and movement, and I thought it was very ugly, like the shape that was happening just like was not speaking to me. But I know from my process that it's just about continuing. So I took a different marker and created a different line that broke into the first line. And it was like, okay, well, that's something else. That's completely different than the first one. And then, as I like to do, I got my scissors and cut it up. Probably when you leave, I'll find the thing that I wanted to show you, which is the original pieces. I love what happens in my brain when I cut things up. That piece too. I'm not going to shred that one. It's a reminder that everything's constantly evolving and nothing needs to be as precious as we think it needs to be, and that precious gems come from deconstruction. Like, if you see this, like, you can imagine a whole sheet of wonky cutout circles. I was playing with the different strips, flipping them and turning them and seeing the different relationships between the way that the lines were now interrupted. I mostly my best stuff comes when I just don't know what to do with myself. And so I just took a nice sharp X-Acto knife and I just sliced them all into these strips. And then I just took out all the middle ones and put the end two together. And it was like, that was the point of the whole piece. But I didn't know that going into it, and I'm not supposed to know that going into it. And you could just see all these different, oh wow, that actually is how it was originally. It's just like a following instructions type of process of, now we're doing this, and oh wow, there's my ego judging it, thinking it's ugly, and then responding with something else, seeing if that does something different. Okay, that does something different, and then cutting it up, being like, freedom. This thing is having its own life, and then putting the last two together and just having this feeling of it's that click, where something emerges that feels right.
Thanks for listening to The Nocturnist, Uncertainty in Medicine. Our core uncertainty team includes me, Emily Silverman, The Nocturnist head of story development, Molly Rose Williams, producer and editor Sam Osborne, and our uncertainty correspondent, Alexa Miller of Arts Practica. Our student producers are Claire Nimura and Celine Everett. Special thanks to Maggie Jackson and Paul Hahn. Our executive producer is Allie Block. Our program director is Ashley Pettit. Our original theme music was composed by Ashton Spencer, and additional music came from Blue Dot Sessions. Artwork for Uncertainty in Medicine was created by Eleni Debo, who is represented by Folio Illustration and Animation Agency. The Nocturnist Uncertainty in Medicine was made possible by generous support from the ABIM Foundation, the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation, and the Josiah Macy Jr. Foundation. The Nocturnist title sponsor is the California Medical Association, a physician-led organization that works to keep the doctor-patient relationship at the heart of medicine. To learn more, visit cmadocs.org. The Nocturnist is also made possible by support from listeners like you. In fact, we recently moved over to Substack, which makes it easier than ever to support our work directly. By joining us for a monthly or annual membership, you'll become an essential part of our creative community. If you enjoy the show, consider signing up today at thenocturnist.substack.com. If you enjoy this episode, please share with a friend or colleague, post on social media, and help others find us by giving us a rating and review in your favorite podcast app. I'm your host, Emily Silverman. See you next week.